everyone, and welcome back to Blues TV. What a weekend it was, our first game back at the Bridge with Mason Mount scoring on his debut, and obviously Frank Lampard's first game in charge back at Stamford Bridge. Anyway, it wasn't the dream result. A lot of positives, a lot of negatives. So me and Lewis thought we would go through the 5 things that we learned against Leicester at the weekend. In at number 1 then is, the defensive transition?
Yeah, defensive transitioning. One of our problems against Leicester was whenever we'd start attacking and the game started turning on us, we all weren't in the right position to defend Leicester's counter-attack. And it was the same issue that we had against Manchester United. Whenever we got hit on the counter-attack, we seemed tactically naive. Players weren't compact, we weren't understanding our positioning. And we just kept getting caught out. We were unlucky to maybe not concede more against Leicester. Against United, obviously it probably wasn't a 4-0 game, but we conceded 4 and the majority were off counter-attacks. And counter-attacks is already looking like a big issue for us this season.
Yeah, I think in the game I could tell, and I think we've known that from the start of this season, although we are very early on, is that we do miss Rudiger. You know, he is our strongest centre-back.
And our one with the most experience right now.
Exactly, the one with the most experience. And although I really, really rate Christensen and Zuma, and I think they can come good. I mean, don't forget, before Christensen got kicked out of the team, he was a very, very solid defender for us.
Yeah, and they're actually one of our better talking points from Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. But I do think you just need some stability in there. So I'd be happy for them to rotate between the two, between Zuma and Christensen, as long as we have Rudiger by their side. But I think we could just really tell that we missed him. We just look a little bit shaky. I start to get really nervous, when they are on the counter-attack. So I think when Rudiger's there, when you have that stability, a bit like when JT was there, you feel like you have that stability at the back to deal with it. And at the moment, I feel like that's what we're lacking.
No, that's a good thing, because at least now Rudiger's had his 90 minutes in the developmental game yesterday. He might even be back for Norwich. Fingers crossed.
In at number 2 then is something that I am really, really noticing, and that is the absence of Callum Hudson-Odoi and Ruben Loftus-Cheek. I think Ruben is obviously quite far off coming back from injury, but Hudson-Odoi is just back in training. He's kicking a ball about. Chelsea FC have Instagrammed a picture of him back in training with Ross Barkley, and that's what I want to see. Do I want us to rush him back? No, of course not. The last thing we need is to have him on the pitch earlier than what he's ready for and what his body can take. But I really do feel like we miss him, and I think once he comes back, he's going to be such an instrumental part of our team. And I think if Frank wants to play the youth, I think I'm all up for that as long as they're ready. For me, I'm not sure if Tammy Abraham is quite ready yet, but I think Mason Mount is ready, and I also think Hudson-Odoi is more than ready, and he proved that last season. So the sooner we can get him back, we'll have more options, And the thing I'm noticing the most at the moment is these youth players really, really want to play. And I just feel as if he is one of our strongest players.
Well, if this is a season of opportunity, then this is Hudson-Odoi and Loftus-Cheek's big season. Now, they're both 2 of our most promising players from last season. It was annoying as hell that they both got injured towards the end of the season, but if they come back and the injury hasn't hit them as much as we're hoping it hasn't, then this is going to be a big breakout season for both of them. There's going to be a lot of expectation on their shoulders, but I think they'll be able to handle it. And I think, especially the way the season has started, it's just going to be all the focus on them, and it's up to them whether they take it.
Who do you think is more instrumental to the team? Who do you think is more important? It's a hard one, isn't it?
It's hard.
Because I think fans will disagree on this.
I'm going to go Loftus-Cheek.
Are you? I got Hudson-Odoi.
No, I think Hudson-Odoi is going to be at that level. I think he's still developing, but he's promising. Loftus-Cheek was carrying us for some games of last season, and you could see how important he was to the team. So I think he's the one that I'm really looking forward to see come back.
Hudson-Odoi for me. The next thing I feel we learnt then is definitely the stamina of our players. Now, I'm not going to be too harsh on this point, because we have to remember we had played in the Super Cup, and actually they took that very, very seriously. It was a chance of silverware, and the boys looked knackered. I mean, you could just tell on the pitch, especially when it got to about 60, 70 minutes. Mason looked absolutely knackered. The whole team looked knackered. I think some of them fell to their knees, didn't they, at the end of it, as did some of the Leicester players. But we'd had such a long trip back from Turkey, and you could tell that they probably were just exhausted and just couldn't take it in the end. And I think that obviously affected our performance, especially in the second half.
See, I'm glad you brought up the Super Cup point, because I thought stamina was an issue as well, and it makes perfect sense that they did play 120 minutes on Wednesday. But the only thing that worries me is that we kind of look the same against Man United, and that was before both of them. By the time we got to the 60th minute, the majority of our players were gassed. We just couldn't compete with Man United. And it kind of looked the same again on Sunday against Leicester, and that's the only little bit of worry for me.
You think? I wouldn't. I don't know if I compare United and Leicester. Fine, we can't finish games off, and we seem to make silly mistakes that obviously result in conceded goals. But I do think you could tell they were just. I just think they were knackered from all travelling. From. I also think you've got to remember they're under a huge amount of pressure this season.
Yeah.
I think they all want to do really well for Frank. I think they all want to prove themselves, especially the players that haven't, broken into the first team yet. And I think it's just a lot of weight on their shoulders. And I think obviously that combined with the amount of travelling they've done and the fact that we did have United on the first day of the season, which was obviously a really important game and a tough game.
Anyway.
Really tough start, and that wouldn't have done much to their confidence. But yeah, I think there's all those things to take into consideration. So I'm hoping this week they've had enough of a break so that we can go to Norwich and hopefully pick up the 3 points.
Please.
In at number 4 then, it's going to be one that we can probably debate for quite a while. It's Willian. Now, Willian had just come back from injury, but fans were really not impressed with his performance. Now, bear in mind, I think it always takes players time to settle back in after injury.
Yeah.
So we have to give some leniency there, some credit. But at the same time, I think with a player with the amount of experience that he's got as a professional footballer and also as a Chelsea first team player, he should have made more of an impact than what he did. So you can take over now, because I know you were really mad in your fan camp about that.
Yeah, I had a lot to say about Willian on Sunday, and I still stand by most of it. But I respect the fact that he's coming back from an injury. I do get that. My only problem is the guy came on in the last 20 minutes. He should have been the fittest player on the pitch, and he played like he'd been playing the most minutes all summer. And that's the only thing I couldn't stand about that. I don't mind.
But do you think that's down to laziness or just not being as good as what he used to be?
Here's the thing.
It's a hard
Here's
question
the thing,
to
because
answer.
I think Willian has been inconsistent for years now, to be honest. I think
I've
it's
always
only
been a
just
Willian
been
fan,
shadowed.
though. I've always been a massive Willian fan. I think at times he's not been given enough credit.
No, at times he hasn't been given enough credit, and he has had good games, but they're too few and far between for me. And now the focus is solely on him, because I think he's the most senior player in our squad now. And this was his game to take into his hands, because the rest of us looked gassed. We were all tired. He's the one that's been given the number 10 shirt from Eden Hazard. We needed to see an impression. Even if he tried and had a bad game, I'll accept that. But if the guy's just jogging around on the pitch, the crosses look half-assed, he's still not beating the first man on corners, and I'm not seeing any improvement. It's just, what are you doing?
And in at number 5 then, and probably the most important point here, is goals. We need goals. We need to learn how to finish games off. For me, if we can't do it, I think going into these games, I knew we needed to go in at 1-0 at half-time, and sometimes that's enough of a cushion, but I think with this squad, with this side, we need to be going in at 2-0 down. And I know that's a lot to ask, I know it's a hard thing to understand, but my reasoning for that is I want us to kill off the games early so that when we have to expect the second half of these games are going to be a lot tougher. We do have a completely new squad. I think you have to remember, not only do we have a manager that's not able to bring in any international players, any experienced players, we're also a team that's revolved around Eden Hazard for years and years and years. That's now gone, and all we're left with is the people that worked around him. You know what I mean? So it's not really a team that's had, much of a chance. And I just feel as if us leaving it to the last minute of these games is only going to make it harder for ourselves.
Yeah, I think the team's starting to learn that they now need to start taking the game into their own hands. Last season we had Eden Hazard to bail us out, now we don't, and a lot of holes in our team are starting to be exposed, and finishing was one of them. Finishing was a problem for the last 2 seasons at least with Chelsea. And what I can say from Sunday is Giroud, in my opinion, didn't get the service that he needed. Tammy, to be fair, he did try, he did get in the positions to shoot, but his finishing does still need to improve.
Yeah, I don't know if Tammy's ready yet. I will, of course, want to give him a chance, absolutely, but I think Frank obviously needs to know that there are some players that are ready and some players that aren't, and we haven't obviously seen enough of them yet, but I do think Giroud should be our main striker for this season, despite what youngsters we have. I think Mason is clearly ready for the Premier League, as do I think is Loftus-Cheek, Hudson-Odoi, but I don't think we should force it, if that makes sense. I think Giroud should be our starting striker, and of course we need to be getting goals, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how well you play for 90 minutes, if you're not scoring goals, you're not winning games. Simple as that.
One thing I will say is, though, Batshuayi did play yesterday. He did score twice as well. He might even be back in time for Norwich.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why Mitchie's not being included. There's obviously something these managers don't see in him. For me, it's incredibly unfair. I don't really care what manager's in charge. Mitchie is a natural born goal scorer to me. I think he's a great character. I think he puts a lot of energy into the team, but a lot of life into the team. And he may not be the Diego Costa that we had. But I definitely think he deserves a chance, and he scored some very important goals for us before he went on loan. So I think that's something that Frank should take into consideration too. So there you have it, guys. Those are the 5 things that we learned playing against Leicester at the weekend. We hope we can pick up the 3 points. So coming up next are the 5 things we think we need to do to beat Norwich at the weekend. Hello everyone, I am Sophie Rose.
And I'm Lewis Gebre-Selassie, and we are your new presenters for Blues TV for the upcoming season.
So make sure you click the subscribe button and keep watching.